My name is Nancy, and there's a world out there, unknown to me until childhood, when I first glimpsed it on TV. Wild animals roamed landscapes I'd never seen, and people spoke languages foreign to mine. The desire to explore this unknown world up close ignited within me, so boldly. I pursued studies abroad during college. My destination, the very unknown world I yearned to discover. Despite the language barrier, the people thrived, and the land teemed with creatures amidst breathtaking landscapes. Eager for others to share in this wonder, I secured a job at a travel agency. Responsible for tour planning, I drew upon my study abroad experiences, managing everything from site inspections to negotiations. Balancing work and personal life, I married Daniel, whom I met through work. Yet, a problem surfaced with my mother-in-law, Barbara. Firm in her belief that women should remain homemakers post-marriage, Barbara clashed with my modern views. Though I respected her perspective, I couldn't let her dictate my life. To evade living under her roof, I proposed buying a house to Daniel, believing it would alter perceptions. Daniel readily agreed, and we acquired a home. However, Barbara's visits became frequent, disrupting our weekends with noise and unwelcome opinions. Despite the tension, Barbara nonchalantly announced an upcoming trip, assuming I'd join. When I hesitated due to work commitments, she accused me of neglecting family. Feeling cornered, I acquiesced, though begrudgingly. As tension simmered, Barbara, with a sly tone, reminded me of my profession, insisting I handle the trip arrangements. Reluctantly, I obliged, concealing my irritation. The destination? London, where my study abroad journey had unfolded. I still have many connections there. It might be challenging for other regions, but perhaps I can manage London. All right, I'll give it a try. I've already got the plane tickets, so just book the hotel. Odd, you've booked the flight, but not the hotel. I managed to get the tickets by redeeming my card miles for first-class seats. Barbara grinned with evident delight. Daniel, leaning in, remarked, "First class, seriously, Mom?" "Yes, it's a first-class trip abroad," Barbara confirmed, her grin widening. "We'll depart at 9:30 p.m., so you can work until the last minute," she added cheerfully. Although her enthusiasm seemed genuine, I couldn't ignore the mountain of branded goods piled on the sofa. "I see," I said, catching on to the implication of her joy. Realizing the need to secure accommodations quickly, I decided to leverage my old contacts from my study abroad days to secure a hotel referral. Making a call, I arranged for accommodations for 4 people in 2 rooms. On the day of the trip, the short notice left me unable to take the day off work. Barbara instructed me to meet at the airport by 6:00 p.m. If I wrap up work soon, I can make it, I reassured myself. Suddenly, Barbara called. "Hello, Barbara," I answered. "Nancy, are you done with work?" she inquired. "I'm just leaving the office now, so I'll be at the airport after 6:00 p.m. "Oh, that's too bad," Barbara responded. "Well, we're actually leaving at 6:00 p.m. "Ah, no way!" I exclaimed, rushing back to my desk to check the flight schedule. London. I found the 9:30 p.m. flight I initially heard about, but there was also a flight leaving after 6:00 p.m. Could it be this flight after 6:00 p.m.? Yes. So the family is going without you. I felt furious. How could she plan so thoroughly to leave me out? Unforgivable. But showing my frustration would play into Barbara's hands. I had to hide my feelings, even if it meant putting on a brave face. Clenching my teeth, I said to Barbara, "I'm the one who booked the hotel, so Daniel knows the hotel name. You can't do anything now." I could hear Barbara laughing on the other end. Annoyed, I said, "Go without me then." "That's better." "We don't need a useless wife like you," she retorted. "Useless? What do you mean? Don't you know what you neglect? Housework for your job." "Daniel is complaining," she continued. "True, I'm busy with work, but I've never slacked off on housework." "Why would Daniel complain? Can I speak to Daniel?" I asked. Barbara's mocking voice was followed by Daniel's greeting. "Hello, what's up, Nancy?" What do you mean you're complaining about me? I asked him. Just that you're always at work and neglecting me, he responded. Neglect? I prepare meals, clean, and do laundry. But you think you're doing it all yourself, right? That's not true, I retorted. Shouldn't you respect me more? Listen to me? Do things for me? I questioned. I know a wife who supports her husband is valued. It's convenient for the husband, but that's not all there is to a marriage, I continued. I never badmouth Daniel in public, always praising him, but not when it's just the two of us. But we need to speak our minds when alone. Otherwise, our relationship would fall apart, and I'd become nothing but a servant to Daniel. Yet he kept complaining about me, I explained. So, you think you can act all high and mighty because you earn more? I challenged him. Not at all, he replied. That annoys me, and you're leaving me behind for that? I asked incredulously. Yeah, consider it stress relief. I'll bring you a souvenir, so don't worry, he assured me. That's not the point, I insisted. Clearly, Daniel was taking me for granted. If that's how it is, I have my own plans. Fine, enjoy the trip. Will do. Bye, I concluded, hanging up. Daniel sounded happy as he hung up. I was livid. I couldn't stand the self-centered Daniel and Barbara. Enjoy your trip without me, but be prepared. Even if you come back crying and apologizing, I won't forgive you. I rushed out of the office with my mobile phone, calling someone. Hey. Hello, it's Nancy. Are you free? I need to talk about that hotel booking. With the trip canceled, I had plenty of time. I'll settle everything now. I ran around with that determination. Then, the next evening, exhausted. I got home, and right then, the phone rang. Hello, Nancy, said Barbara, sounding quite angry. I knew the reason, but pretended not to. Barbara, are you enjoying the trip? I asked. This is no time for that. We can't check into the hotel. Did you have a reservation? You made the reservation, didn't you? Barbara's tone grew more agitated. I canceled it because I wasn't going, I replied. Huh. What then? Where are we supposed to stay tonight? Barbara's frustration was palpable. I don't know, I admitted. Barbara's angry voice came through. But she's in London. Her anger over the phone isn't scary at all. That's tough, being abroad without a hotel. You never know what might happen, I remarked. Wait, help me? Barbara sounded panicked. Then, a faint voice in the background. There's a canceled room. Anthony's negotiating for us to stay there, Daniel's voice reassured. Is that true, Daniel? Barbara demanded. Looks like it'll be fine. You see, Nancy, the room was available because I canceled it, Daniel explained. But this was all part of my plan. My real aim was something else. Glad there was a vacancy. Thought you'd be smug about canceling our hotel, didn't you? I retorted. No, not really, Barbara laughed loudly. Frustrated, aren't you? You can admit it if you're upset. I just canceled it because I wasn't going. Putting on a brave face. How pathetic. Typical of Daniel's useless wife, Barbara continued. Tired of listening to her bragging, I quietly hung up the phone. She probably didn't even notice. I smiled a little at that thought. Anyway, just a few more days to endure. I braced myself and had dinner. A few days later, on my way back from a certain place, Barbara called again. Hello, what's up, Nancy? What's going on again? She asked. Not again. What's wrong with this hotel? I inquired. In short, they stayed in the room I canceled, thanks to Anthony's negotiation. They were supposed to stay for 4 days and check out today, but there was a problem. They were billed £8,000 by the hotel. What's the issue? I asked. It's £2,000 per night, right? That's about $2,500 per night in dollars. Ridiculous. It's for 2 rooms, right? So, about $1,200 per room. You told Daniel it was $300 per room per night. Yes, I did. So it should be $600 for 2 rooms. Why is it 4 times? I was astonished that they stayed without even checking the room rates. Well, I anticipated this, so I set it up accordingly. Anyway, Barbara making a fuss on the phone must be bothering others. I should calm her down. Hey, Nancy, can you hear me? Barbara's voice echoed through the phone. Barbara, can you be a bit quieter? I interjected. Why did you lie? She accused, without reflecting on herself. Exasperated, I began to explain to Barbara. The $300 rate was because I made the reservation. Huh, so because it was last minute? She questioned. I asked a friend who runs a hotel, I replied. A friend of yours? She inquired. Their hotel offers rooms for around $600 for 2 people, I explained. Then why $11,200? Barbara sounded flustered. That's the rate for a really nice room. My friend did me a favor, I clarified. A favor. Barbara sounded taken aback. When I heard from Barbara, there was no time left for the trip, so I told my friend any available room would do. The only vacancy was an expensive suite. My friend kindly gave a discount. I continued. Barbara left me behind without asking. I immediately told my friend the situation and got the room canceled. But I couldn't just leave Barbara and the others without a hotel, so I asked to accommodate them at the regular price if they came. I knew Barbara, having heard about the hotel from Daniel, wouldn't check the price. And I was right. Come on, you should have said that. Yelling won't help. Please make sure to pay, I urged. We're not paying, Nancy. You pay, Barbara retorted. But if you don't pay, you'll be arrested, I warned. Arrested. Of course, troubles abroad can be messy. Are you okay with that? Barbara seemed at a loss for words. As I was about to hang up, thinking I had won, Barbara shouted, Don't mess with me. You'll regret this when I get back. That's fine, but we're strangers now, right? I responded. Huh. Why? Barbara sounded confused. Well, you said it was a family trip. So since I'm not there, I'm not family, right? I reasoned. Before she could finish, Anthony's voice came from the phone. What's all this yelling about? Be quiet. It's embarrassing. Seizing the opportunity, I called out to him, Anthony, are you okay? How's your cold? I never had a cold in the first place. What's going on? Anthony's voice was filled with concern. It seemed Anthony took the phone from Barbara. His voice grew louder. Nancy, can you explain everything? I can, actually. I told him everything from the beginning. I see. So that's why you didn't come. I'm sorry. I wanted to go. Anthony's voice softened. No, Nancy, you're not at fault. It's Barbara and Daniel. Anthony affirmed. From afar, I heard a whimper. Barbara and Daniel seemed frightened by Anthony's anger. Realizing this, an idea came to me. Should I tell Anthony what Barbara has been doing? I thought so. Anthony, can I tell you something? I asked hesitantly. What is it? Anthony replied. Barbara comes to our house almost every weekend, and when she throws away receipts at our place, there are piles of them, I explained. What receipts? For branded goods? Anthony sounded surprised. It's fine to buy a lot, but please dispose of the receipts at your place. Barbara wasn't just being noisy at our house. She was secretly buying branded goods and disposing of the receipts at our place to hide it from Anthony, thinking she wouldn't get caught this way. Of course, I concluded. I'm a witness, so it's pointless. But it seemed Anthony didn't know. That's interesting to hear. Also, please tell her to stop bad-mouthing you at our place. She talks about me too. Yes, she says you don't earn much. Daniel, too, calls him a useless dad, I think. Anything else? Anthony prompted. So I spilled all my pent-up frustrations to Anthony. Of course, some of it wasn't directly related to Anthony, but he listened silently. At the end, he apologized to me. I'm sorry. Now I understand. Understand what? Why Barbara didn't want to use her card to pay for the hotel. Maybe probably because the cost was much higher than she expected, close to her credit limit. I'm sorry. Whoever's voice interjected. That was unforgivable. All your wasteful spending, Barbara. I want a divorce. Please don't do that. Anthony's shouting was followed by Barbara's pitiful voice. He also yelled at Daniel. Daniel, why don't you defend your wife? That's Don't come to my house anymore. Reflect on this alone, Anthony said firmly. Yes, sir. Daniel sounded unusually obedient. Probably he thought being banished from his parents' house wasn't a big deal. That's when I struck the final blow. So, Daniel, looks like you're going to live alone now, huh? What do you mean? Suddenly, Daniel's voice got louder. He must have grabbed the phone. I moved my phone a bit away and told him the situation. Daniel, I want a divorce. A divorce? You're joking, right? No, I'm serious. I've already sold the house. You sold it? Why would you do that without telling me? That's our house. No, it's my house. But I was paying the mortgage too. No, you weren't. What do you mean? I was giving you part of my salary every month. That was for living expenses. A few hundred isn't enough for the mortgage. Daniel had been giving me a few hundred monthly. It helped with living expenses, but not enough for the mortgage. So I paid it alone. The house was in my name, so there was no room for complaint. This incident made me decide to divorce Daniel. I sold the house full of unpleasant memories of living with him. So, you'll be living alone now. Wait, think it over. No, it's decided. I'll contact you once I find a place. Then I'll send you the official notice. Official notice? Of course, I'll be claiming compensation in the divorce. Wait for me. Daniel was crying on the other end, but I didn't care. I hung up the phone. After that, Daniel and I divorced following discussions. Anthony actually divorced Barbara too. Barbara, due to her wasteful spending, didn't get any compensation in the divorce and was left on her own. I was just thrown out of the room. Daniel was nearly broke, apparently having spent everything except the few hundred he gave me each month on frivolous things. Now he's living in a rundown apartment and commuting to work. But things might be better for Daniel than Barbara. With no house or money and Daniel's place too small, Barbara had to take a live-in job. She's working hard from morning till night now. As for me, I'm doing great being single. I have more free time and can handle overseas negotiations. I've become a relied-upon figure at work, even hearing talks of a promotion to department head today. I'm busy flying around the world, planning new tour packages. At my mother's funeral, my mother-in-law wore a grin as she declared, "This house will be inherited by my son." Contemplating which room to take, she remarked, "I wonder if I should choose this one." Politely, I corrected her, stating, "Actually, I'm the one inheriting this house." Unfazed, she retorted, "I know, but isn't it true that a wife's belongings belong to her husband? So, in essence, this house belongs to my son, right?" I sighed, questioning the validity of her claim. Cheerfully, she added, "From now on, let's get along." Hesitating, I asked, "What do you mean by get along?" She declared, "Turning this room into my room." I inquired, "Does that mean we'll be living together?" Confidently, she replied, "Exactly." With such a splendid house, it'd be a waste to have empty rooms when two people can live here, don't you think? Despite my recent loss, my mother-in-law seemed blissfully unaware of my grief. Why would she bring this up now? Can't she see the sadness on my face? It's no time for jokes. This house holds precious memories, built by my respected father and cherished by my late mother. I don't want my unreasonable mother-in-law to live here, and my husband, who doesn't stop at it, is equally at fault. To prevent my precious home from being tainted, I decided to take the initiative before moving out. I am a 42-year-old office worker, having missed the timing for marriage and still being single after turning 40. I had given up on the idea of getting married. However, through an acquaintance's introduction, I met Michael, who is 4 years younger than me, and we were able to get married. My husband is a kind person who prioritizes my opinions. Where should we go for our honeymoon? You mentioned that Europe would be nice, right? I asked. But didn't you say you preferred the Maldives? Let's go to the Maldives. My husband replied. My mom wants to live with us. My dad's health isn't great, and it seems my mom is finding it challenging to manage alone, he explained. I understand that your mom is going through a tough time, but didn't we agree not to live together before we got married? I questioned. You're right. I'll talk to my mom about it. My husband always listens to my whims, and I often feel guilty about it. Meeting a good person is a joy, but there's one regret. My father passed away 3 years before I got married, so I couldn't show him my wedding and reassure him. My father was a strict executive at a small and medium enterprise, and I deeply respected him. Despite the modest size of the company, his income was decent, and our family home was sizable enough to hold a funeral. As I began working as an office employee, I gained a deeper understanding of the challenges of work, which only increased my admiration for my father. And then 2 years after our marriage, when mother also passed away, even my mom, my husband asked, "Are you okay? Shouldn't you take a break in the back room?" Funerals are generally less commonly held at home, but my mother's funeral was conducted at home. During my mother's funeral, he always looked out for me. Truly, I was fortunate to have met such a good husband. That's when my mother-in-law, Nancy, arrived. "My deepest condolences. I sincerely sympathize with you," I replied. "Thank you." I hadn't lived together with my mother-in-law, and our interactions had been limited, maintaining a reasonable distance. However, it was during my mother's funeral that I glimpsed her true nature. Following the funeral, my mother-in-law approached me. While it was not uncommon for her to seek me out, her expression carried an oddly gleeful tone. "We greatly appreciate your assistance during this funeral. Thanks to you, we were able to smoothly complete the ceremony," she expressed appreciatively. Then, abruptly, she added, "The funeral is over now. Isn't it enough with the formalities?" I was taken aback, thinking she was initially trying to be considerate of my grief, but it soon became evident that wasn't the case. Commenting on the splendid house my parents had, I replied, "Wait a moment." Undeterred, she boldly walked into the depths of the house. I protested, "Oh, Mom, this is inconvenient. Some areas are messy." Dismissing my concerns, she declared, "Don't fuss over details. More importantly, this house will be inherited by my son. I wonder if I should take this room." Hesitating, I tried to clarify, "Mom, actually, I'm the one inheriting this house." Smirking, she responded, "I know your parents didn't have any other children, right? And isn't a wife's belongings her husband's? So, in essence, this house belongs to my son, doesn't it?" I sighed, questioning the validity of her claim. Cheerfully, she added, "From now on, let's get along." My hesitation prompted her to confidently declare, "I mean turning this room into my room." Concerned, I asked, "Does that mean we'll be living together?" Without hesitation, she replied, "Exactly. I've decided with such a splendid house, it'd be a waste to have empty rooms when two people can live here. Finally, I won't have to take care of my husband all by myself." Unfortunately, my mother had recently passed away, and yet my mother-in-law was making such statements. I became increasingly angered, wondering why she would joke around at a time like this. Just as my conversation with my mother-in-law seemed to catch my husband's attention, he intervened. "Mom, what are you saying? This isn't the right time for such discussions," he scolded. Undeterred, my mother-in-law retorted, "Why make such a fuss?" Firmly, my husband insisted, "Just leave." He escorted her out of the house, apologizing, "Sorry, my mom can be unreasonable." Grateful for my dependable husband, I replied, "It's fine. Thanks to you for handling it." Yet, in the days that followed, I would come to realize that my husband's perspective on scolding my mother-in-law was subtly different from my own. 10 days after my mother's funeral, as things settled down a bit, we decided to discuss the fate of my family home. Unexpectedly, my husband made a proposal. "This apartment is cramped. Shouldn't we move back to my parents' house?" I suggested. Agreeing, he added, "Yeah, you're right. With more belongings and the possibility of having kids, it's better than squeezing into this tiny apartment." Then, hesitantly, he concluded, "Well then, we should start preparing for the move." I had a pressing matter to discuss about the move. "What's the matter?" I inquired. He hesitated before revealing. Considering the spacious house and all the empty rooms, I thought maybe my parents could move in with us. Stunned, I questioned, Are you suggesting we live together? Recently, I've noticed a change in my husband. Despite thinking he prioritized my opinions, I now wonder if he's merely a yes man or even a pushover. His compliance with my mother-in-law's requests and his suggestion of living together make me question his true stance. Despite my repeated objections to cohabitation, he persists, seemingly prioritizing her over me. Haven't I said it repeatedly? We won't live together, I remind him. He responds, but Mom keeps insisting on it. I counter, during the funeral, you scolded her, didn't you? You stood up for me and opposed cohabitation. He admits, yes, I was upset about her barging into the house. But that doesn't mean I'm entirely against living together. I just thought such an important decision shouldn't be made casually in that setting. It was decisive. Despite nodding in agreement with my stance, he seems more inclined towards my mother-in-law. Moreover, he avoids making definitive decisions, maintaining a certain distance, perhaps unconsciously believing he remains neutral. People like him can be tricky, convincing themselves of their neutrality and decision-making abilities. It's frustrating. I oppose living with someone who barged into my parents' house on the day of the funeral and suggested living in a particular room. I won't change my stance. Please convey this to your mom, I insist. He responds, why? You seem really bothered by it. Fine, I'll let her know. While I had mentally prepared for the possibility of living with my in-laws when we got married, witnessing my mother-in-law's behavior during my mother's funeral changed my perspective. Living together in the cherished home my father built is now unthinkable, especially considering my husband's lack of assertiveness. When he conveyed my opposition to cohabitation, my mother-in-law directly protested by calling me. Why are you opposing cohabitation when there's such a spacious house? You're Michael's wife now, and his father and I are your parents, right? Why such strong opposition to living together with us? I reiterated my decline for cohabitation, explaining my husband's mobility issues and the challenges I face alone. She accused me of abandoning them, prompting me to remind her of the reasons my husband had shared. Despite feeling sorry for my father-in-law's health, I can't ignore the possibility of everything related to him being pushed onto me if we were to live together. If we consider cohabitation a significant improvement in my husband and mother-in-law's mindset is a non-negotiable requirement. A few days after my mother-in-law labeled me heartless, my husband surprised me by rearranging the living room, moving furniture around to create space. Intrigued, I asked, "What are you doing? Is this for storing moving boxes?" He responded, "No. I'm planning to make space for 2 beds here." The mention of 2 beds filled me with dread, and cautiously, I asked, "Are your parents coming to stay?" To my dismay, he replied, "No, they're moving in today, even before the actual move." The realization hit me, despite my objections. My husband and mother-in-law were forcing cohabitation upon me. Why is this happening? I questioned, feeling a growing sense of frustration. He explained their lease is up, so we decided they'd move here without renewing it. It'll be cramped for 4 people, but we're moving soon, right? Just bear with it for a little while. Distressed, I reiterated, that's not what I meant. Why is cohabitation even on the table? I've said it before. I don't want to live with someone who barged into my parents' house on the day of the funeral and suggested living in this room. I'll make sure to talk to Mom. He responded, "We'll be living together from now on, so please get along." Annoyed, I questioned, "Why do you prioritize everything your mom says?" He clarified, "It's not about prioritizing her. I listened to both of your opinions and made a judgment." However, my husband, often a yes man when it came to my mother-in-law, seemed to have fallen for her cohabitation strategy. Unwittingly swayed by her, he believed he was making independent judgments. I used to see him as kind, but when paired with my mother-in-law, he became a handful, forcing me into cohabitation with my in-laws. As we welcomed my in-laws into our cramped apartment, my mother-in-law began complaining about the living conditions. Apologizing for the sudden addition of 2 elderly people, I assured them we would endure until the move. However, my father-in-law, Tony, seemed polite, and it appeared he wouldn't be problematic. But subtle signs indicated he was following my mother-in-law's lead, becoming another yes man. Days later, my mother-in-law requested an errand to buy a medicated patch. Frustrated, I wondered why she made decisions without involving me in the conversation. Minor as it was, it raised concerns about potential future impositions. Living together seemed unsustainable. With my in-laws preparing for their move to my parents' home, I decided to take preemptive action. As my mother-in-law expressed excitement about moving to the spacious house, I initiated behind-the-scenes preparations, determined to protect my parents' home. After about 10 uneventful days, I revealed my decision to renounce my inheritance. Handing over the official court approval, I explained, "That house holds immense sentimental value. I couldn't bear the thought of you living there, so I decided to let go of the house, preserving it as a beautiful memory in my heart." My mother-in-law scolded, "What madness possessed you? Even if you were letting it go, you could have sold it for money. Why abandon the house?" I calmly explained, "Even if I sold it, you'd just rely on that money." "Next, I thought it'd be clearer if I simply had nothing," she retorted. "We moved out of our previous place for this move, you know. What are you doing? How will you make it up to us?" Firmly, I stood my ground. I've consistently opposed cohabitation, yet without proper discussion, you forced it upon me. So I took a firm stance. Both my husband and mother-in-law seemed stunned upon learning about my renunciation of inheritance. Their faces drained of color, and they were left speechless, their strength sapped. My father-in-law looked bewildered as he observed the two of them. However, I wasn't about to let up. "Michael," I continued, "I've been thinking about getting a divorce. What do you think?" My husband stammered, "Huh, divorce?" My mother-in-law chimed in, "Michael, you should divorce this ridiculous wife immediately." I had expected her immediate demand for divorce, wanting to confirm whether my husband could make an independent decision at this critical moment. "Mom," my husband mumbled. His response was still pending, but my resolve to proceed with the divorce had solidified. "Fine, divorce is the only option," my mother-in-law snapped. My father-in-law interjected, "Michael, it can't be helped. Your mom insists." Sighing, my husband said, "Well, you seem to want a divorce too, and maybe that's for the best." Even in significant decisions, my husband and father-in-law remained yes men to my mother-in-law, and now my husband's words made it sound as if he changed his opinion for my sake. "Very well," I declared, "let's proceed with the divorce. I'll be moving out with minimal belongings." I spent the night at a budget hotel. Urgent matters awaited the next day, so I took half a day off work and headed back to the courthouse. A few days later, my mother-in-law called me, demanding answers. What's going on? It seems that house is becoming yours." Why the sudden outburst? Did you find out through the estate division process? Yes, that house belongs to me. You forged documents and deceived us. I calmly refuted. Why would I forge documents meant for court submission? Those are genuine. Then why is the house becoming yours when you were supposed to renounce the inheritance? I explained. Well, right after that, I promptly withdrew the application. Renouncing an inheritance is difficult once accepted. However, it takes about a month for the renunciation application to be accepted, during which time it can be withdrawn at any point. The documents I showed my in-laws were not acceptance-related. They were from the application stage. I intentionally made them believe I had relinquished the house and confronted them with the prospect of divorce to gauge their reactions and decide my next steps. I didn't expect my mother-in-law's mindset to change, but I hoped my husband would reconsider and express that he didn't want a divorce. If he said he didn't want a divorce, I planned to rethink it and later explain about the house. However, so the house really becomes yours then, since it was acquired before the divorce. It's subject to property division, right? In such cases, you two are supposed to split the money from selling it, don't you? My mother-in-law seemed determined to extract whatever she could, recognizing the house wouldn't be hers. However, I had foreseen this. If that house were jointly acquired, it would indeed be considered shared property. However, it's a unique asset acquired through inheritance, exempt from property division. Unfortunately, specific assets like this aren't eligible for division. She persisted. What about the money that would come to Michael through property division? I calmly responded. We've only been married for a few years, so there's hardly anything substantial. Maybe just the car, although there's still an outstanding loan on it. Accusing me of selfishness, she called me heartless and declared, I'm protecting that house because it holds precious memories of my parents. I don't want people like you living there. If you have any further complaints, please go through a lawyer. After the call with my mother-in-law, the divorce proceedings progressed smoothly. Presumably, she urged my husband to expedite the divorce. Regardless, the divorce was finalized, and I was free from the burden of dealing with my in-laws. I felt a sense of relief, as if I had successfully shielded my father's home from harm. After I moved out, my former in-laws spent some time in the apartment where my ex-husband and I used to live. Despite one less person, the small space likely felt cramped. My former mother-in-law explored new housing options, but their age posed challenges in passing rental application screenings. Consequently, my ex-husband opted to rent a smaller single-family home for them. Although it's smaller, being a house, the rent is likely higher than the apartment. He also assumed the responsibility of supporting his parents. My ex-husband faces a challenging life ahead. Initially excited about moving into the large house my father left behind, my former mother-in-law now settles for a considerably smaller home, likely leaving her disappointed. As for me, I've embarked on a new chapter in the house my parents left me. It radiates warmth, as if my parents are still present. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time. When I ventured into a town I seldom visited for shopping, I stumbled upon a disconcerting sight. My husband and mother walking arm in arm, sharing intimate kisses without a hint of concern for onlookers. Overwhelmed with shock, I confronted them, only to find them unapologetic, even justifying their actions. Swiftly, I divulged the shocking revelation to my father and opted for a divorce. However, life took an unexpected turn after my father's demise, leading me to cross paths with my mother and ex-husband once again. Years had passed, and as I laid eyes on my mother, her visibly pregnant belly spoke volumes. Catching my gaze, she smirked in triumph. Ah, you've noticed. There's a little one growing in here. It seems like you've been yearning for this for quite a while, struggling with infertility. Well, we managed to achieve it effortlessly. Now I can finally embrace fatherhood. The decision to part ways had been a wise one. They aimed to hurt me with insults, but to their dismay, I remained impervious to their attempts. That's quite amusing. The two of you look utterly foolish together, I remarked, laughter bubbling within me. My name is Emily, a 24-year-old office worker, born to young parents entangled in a whirlwind romance. My parents, Linda and Ken, married hastily due to my arrival during their high school years. Initially, their union appeared promising, with my father actively involved in my early years. However, a workplace accident left him physically impaired, triggering a drastic change in my mother's demeanor. As my father struggled with rehabilitation, my mother's indifference and disdain for him became evident. She spewed insults and mockery, creating a strained environment. Despite financial challenges, my father's perseverance allowed him to walk again, but my mother's coldness persisted. Growing up, my mother vented her discontent about my father, creating a rift between them. Our family struggled financially, and my mother's night shifts left me primarily under my father's care. Graduating from high school, my dreams of college were dashed by my mother's insistence that I work to support the family. I'm sorry, Emily. My condition has forced this life upon you. Don't apologize, Dad. I'm content if it eases your burden. After years of hard work, I married Michael, hoping to create a warm family unlike my parents' strained relationship. However, The joy turned to frustration when conceiving proved elusive, and Michael shifted the blame entirely onto me. I wanted kids too, but it seems you're the issue. Why can't we have children? Desperate, I suggested seeking medical advice, but Michael stubbornly blamed me and refused infertility treatments. As my efforts to conceive faltered, suspicions arose about his fidelity, fueled by late-night returns with the scent of perfume lingering on his clothes. The journey that began with familial betrayal had woven into a tale of personal resilience and strength. Further scrutiny of the credit card statements unveiled unexplained expenditures, deepening my suspicions. Direct confrontation with my husband seemed fruitless, anticipating his evasion of the inquiry. The opportune moment to address my concerns emerged during an unexpected visit to a town I rarely frequented for shopping. Spotting my husband, who claimed to be working that day, walking with a woman by his side stirred curiosity. "Is that Michael? He was supposed to be working today," I mused, ready to call out to him. My surprise intensified when I identified the woman accompanying him. It was my mother. Since marrying, I had maintained distance from her, seldom bringing my husband to my parents' house. Observing them discreetly, my astonishment peaked as they held hands and kissed. Unable to contain my shock, I confronted them, chasing after the unexpected duo. "Hey, Michael." "Mom." Caught off guard, they halted, feigning surprise. My mother attempted to downplay the situation, claiming they merely ran into each other and exchanged pleasantries. Approaching my mother, I discerned a familiar scent, one I had encountered on my husband's clothes after his late-night returns. Reluctantly, I concluded that my mother was his clandestine partner. "Don't lie, I saw it. You and Michael kissing." Their denials crumbled under the weight of my revelation. Admitting their deceit, my mother revealed her involvement with Michael. "Huh, you must be mistaken. We just happened to bump into each other, that's all." "I didn't think we'd be found out so soon," she protested. Their web of deception unraveled further as my husband confessed his preference for older women, specifically naming my mother Linda. "Sorry, Emily. I did feel bad for you, but I've liked Michael since we first met," my mother confessed, laying bare the painful betrayal. My mother and husband shamelessly confessed to shocking revelations. It was just a chance encounter, and things unfolded while having tea. "I'm young and crave love experiences," my husband admitted unabashedly. With our marriage already strained, talking to Linda intensified my attraction towards her, he confessed. Acknowledging the information, my mother addressed our fertility struggles, adding, "Michael desired a boy, and unfortunately, because of you." Unable to comprehend the depths of their betrayal, I confronted them about divulging our private matters to my mother. "You talked about our issues with my mom? It's true, isn't it? You blame me for not having kids." Incredibly, my husband had aired our intimate struggles to my mother, portraying himself as the victim. Anger surged within me, realizing the impossibility of sustaining this marriage. "You're the worst. Do you even realize what you've done?" I yelled at the pair, exhausted by their feeble justifications. "I can't help it. Your failure as a wife and a woman led to this," he retorted callously. "Well, I don't mean a husband like you." Seeking liberation, I declared, "I want a divorce. I've grown tired of your constant excuses and inability to have kids. It'll be a relief to be free of a useless wife like you." Apologizing insincerely, my mother remarked, "I didn't mean to, but it seems like taking your precious husband away. My bad." Unmoved by her false remorse, I issued a warning. "If I disclose this affair to Dad, your divorce is imminent. Brace yourself." My mother's demeanor shifted at the revelation, but she swiftly regained her composure. "Well, there's no concrete evidence of our affair. Your divorce with Michael is your business. I'll divorce when I feel like it. Let's go," she declared, prompting Michael to hastily abandon me. Despite their evident infidelity, my mother displayed no urgency in divorcing my father. In stark contrast, I promptly headed to my parents' house and disclosed everything to my father. "So that's what's been happening, huh? I endured that woman for years, thinking it would be better for you to have a mother. I never expected her to be this terrible to her own daughter. My father expressed his disappointment with a bitter glance. I've decided to divorce Michael. I can't stay married after what happened. What about Mom? I inquired. Don't worry. I have a plan. I won't let them have their way, my father assured. Later, Michael sent the completed divorce forms, which I signed, formalizing our separation. My mother, however, never returned home, apparently eloping with Michael. Despite the frustration, my father advised me to let go of them both, and I chose to move on from my ex-husband and my mother. Leaving the apartment I shared with Michael, I returned to my parents' house. Ironically, my father had become adept at taking care of himself, thanks to my mother's lack of assistance. Though the outcome was unfortunate, I found solace in returning to my roots. It's good to be living with you again, Emily. Thank you for coming back, my father expressed his gratitude. A fleeting period of tranquility with my father was abruptly disrupted by his contraction of the prevalent pneumonia, thrusting him into a perilous struggle between life and death. Emily, I've burdened you greatly, and I'm sincerely sorry. Live your life as you see fit. My father, teetering on the edge of consciousness, tightly held my hand and imparted those parting words. I tearfully nodded in response. Despite concerted efforts to combat the illness, his health deteriorated rapidly, leading to his eventual demise. Dad, I can't fathom your sudden departure. I wish I had been there more for you. I lamented while grappling with the preparations for his funeral. In the midst of my grief, an unwelcome pair arrived unannounced at our doorstep. A long time no see. Heard he died. My mother, and to my dismay, my ex-husband Michael stood there, their faces adorned with disagreeable smiles. They intruded with a brazen sense of entitlement. Why are you here? Leave. Who do you think you are? I am his wife. It's only natural for a wife to be present when her husband passes, my mother asserted. How dare you say that after abandoning us for years? Ah, yes, say what you want. Regardless of your objections, I am his wife. That entitles me to the inheritance. Wasn't there insurance? Disgusting. So, you never divorced Dad for this reason. Reflecting on my father's journey, despite lacking formal education and retiring from construction work due to injuries, he ascended to a respected position in a later joined company. His perseverance, honed during his time as a craftsman, endeared him to colleagues. My mother's decision to abstain from divorce now seemed strategic, securing a share of his hard-earned legacy. Now let's discuss the division of property. Knowing him, he wasn't driven by material desires, so I'm aware he saved up quite a sum, my mother suggested, pushing the conversation forward. It was then that I noticed something peculiar about her. She was dressed in maternity clothes, and her belly was notably large. Catching my gaze, she chuckled triumphantly. Oh, you've noticed. Yes, I'm carrying Michael's child. Unlike you, Emily, who couldn't conceive. We succeeded right away. Breaking up with you was truly the best decision. Now I can finally become a father. They proceeded to hurl hurtful insults, attempting to inflict maximum pain. Yet their efforts proved futile. I remained unaffected. That's amusing. Both of you look so foolish together, I laughed, holding my stomach, as they stared dumbfounded. What's so funny? This is just ridiculous. But are you certain that child is truly Michael's? My question irritated Michael, but my mother's composure wavered. Her eyes darted around, revealing a visible unease, though Michael remained oblivious. It's undoubtedly my child. Don't make baseless accusations out of bitterness. Yes, exactly. No need to be bitter. We'll see if it's baseless once you see this. Stepping away, I returned with the document in hand, presenting it to them. What's this all about? What? Why are you so surprised? It can't be that significant. What's the meaning of this? Both were taken aback by the document. A detective agency's investigation report summarizing my mother's social interactions. After my mother eloped with Michael, I coincidentally spotted her in the city. However, she wasn't with Michael, but with a young man I didn't recognize. Following them discreetly, they entered a hotel together. What does this mean? Could it be that Mom is? Having consulted with my father during his lifetime, I opted to investigate my mother's behavior, sensing its potential usefulness. The detective agency's findings confirmed my suspicions. My mother was deeply entangled with a man other than Michael. As Michael read the document with disbelief, he cast accusing glares at my mother standing beside him. What on earth? Were you deceiving me? This is absurd. Emily is lying. The child in my belly is undoubtedly yours. Despite her flustered state, my mother vehemently insisted that the baby was Michael's. Whom do you believe, Emily or me? Oh, that's convenient. Accusing your own mother just because you couldn't have children. What a terrible woman. Michael, swayed by my mother, regained his composure. They dismissed the report as false and resumed blaming me. Believe what you want, but unfortunately, there's concrete evidence. You can come out now. Summoning someone from the next room, a man entered. Who's that? I don't know him. Both were puzzled by the appearance of the unfamiliar man. This is my husband. You wouldn't know him, of course, because after you, I remarried him. His name is Tom. I met him through a friend a year after divorcing Michael and remarried him. How does this man prove anything? Unlike with you, I am genuinely pregnant with this child. So what? Speak plainly. Don't you get it? I couldn't conceive with you, no matter how hard we tried, but with Tom, I got pregnant right away. The implication of my words dawned on Michael, and his eyes widened. You avoided going to the clinic because it was a hassle. But I had tests done, and there were no issues with my fertility, so the problem was with you. That's a lie. But it's strange, isn't it? Supposedly, you have infertility issues, yet my mother is pregnant. Are you sure that baby is yours? Confronted with my question, Michael couldn't argue back and turned his glare towards Linda beside him. Hey, tell me the truth. Ah, fine. You win. You admitted it rather quickly. I thought you'd deny it more. Being with you, Michael, was just a game for me. What do you mean? I was with you because you were Emily's husband, you know, coveting what someone else had. But my true love was another man. I was planning to leave you soon anyway. Stunned by her words, Michael was left without a response. I intended to enjoy this game until I got caught. Well, it doesn't matter whether or not I'm carrying his child. My right to the inheritance remains unchanged. You're still fixated on the inheritance? Unfortunately, you'll have to abandon that notion. What? How many times do I have to say it? I never divorced your father, so I have a right to the inheritance. That's what I've been trying to tell you. There's no such right because you and Dad were divorced long ago. That can't be. Maybe you've forgotten because of your age, but Dad had the divorce papers you already filled out. When I reported my mother's affair to my father, he revealed a completed divorce form. Apparently, he had kept it without filing it because of me. But before he passed away, he used that form to divorce my mother. So, Linda, you won't get a single penny of Dad's estate. Do you understand now? That can't be. At my words, my mother, who had been smug until then, turned pale. Michael continued glaring at her. I'm going home. Realizing her affair was exposed and that she would not receive any inheritance, my mother fled as if running away. Later, my mother did give birth to a boy, but it was clear without even needing a DNA test that he was not Michael's child. I never thought you'd be such a jerk. He abandoned my mother, who failed to secure any inheritance, and disappeared. The man who was my mother's main affair partner also ran away upon learning of her pregnancy, as their relationship was apparently just a casual fling for him. In the end, my mother became a single mother at 40, left to raise a young child on her own without anyone to rely on. She is raising her son on welfare. The care of a small boy at her old age is physically demanding, and she has aged significantly. I once saw my mother with her son from a distance. With increased gray hair, she looked more like a grandmother than a mother. Meanwhile, I gave birth to a healthy girl, and now our family of 3 lives happily. Ironically, the child my mother gave birth to is my half-brother, and he will be in the same grade as my daughter, making our family situation quite complicated. On the anniversary of my father's death, we planned to visit his grave as a family of 3. The betrayal by my ex-husband and mother was painful, but it led me to gain an irreplaceable family. Surely he's watching over us from heaven, right? My Father in heaven. He must also be delighted with the birth of his granddaughter. With the love he gave us in our hearts, we vowed to continue walking closely as a family.